In today's video, I'm going to explain what assessments of capacity, strength and power look like for the boxer's foot and ankle, how this impacts their performance in the ring, and ways in which boxing coaches can individualize their boxers' training even when this occurs in a group setting. Capacity.
Check in with Dictionary Corner. What have you got?
Capacity can be thought of as the ability to tolerate positions under fatigue. In my previous Patreon article on the foot speed specificity spectrum, I explained that foot and ankle exercises for boxing can be categorized as either general, related, or specific, and that at different times there will be needs for exercises from each of these categories. Whilst there are many components that contribute towards fatigue, the following assessments assure that we can rule out a lack of muscular endurance, which we otherwise refer to as capacity from here on in. If a boxer is acing these tests with the correct positions, yet still finds their muscles get tired in a fight, then there are other areas, such as whether or not they've banked enough rounds of specific footwork drills, that we need to investigate.
In the video, I've told people I do 2 rounds going to the left with no punches. You know how many people have sent me videos with this tutorial and they're like switching stances and their feet are all over the place?
We break Humpty Dumpty down with our general capacity exercises, and we put Humpty Dumpty back together again with more specific ones. If a boxer cannot score 25 reps on each leg without breaking their posture, their risk of injury will spike as soon as their training load does. I like to look at this 25 rep limit with assessments such as calf raises, ant-tib raises and hamstring bridges. These exercises are deliberately general because they enable us to achieve a greater level of progressive overload at a localized level. We also have capacity exercises which more closely resemble boxing, such as the loach drill.
Watch me execute it first. I'm going to step to the left 2 times. 1, 2. And then I'm going to step backwards. Then I'm going to step to the left 2 times. 1, 2, backwards. 1, 2, backwards.
This allows us to piece Humpty Dumpty back together again by targeting the capacity of the foot and ankle in a sports-specific way. Now, does having a poor base fatigue a boxer's feet more quickly, or does having poor foot and ankle capacity lead to a boxer having a poor base? Barry Robinson's ebook, The Rhythm Step Explained, did a great job of doing just that through film study and expert linguistics. The rhythm step is when a fighter uses his feet in an inefficient and unnecessary manner whilst compromising his base to accomplish something. Whilst the ebook alluded to several reasons why the rhythm step might happen, one thing it didn't bring to the table was that a rhythm step might be indicative of a boxer lacking specific muscular endurance to maintain their base. If you try and hold or maintain any position, such as the exact distance or angle between your feet, there's going to come a time when maintaining that position exceeds a fighter's capacity to do so. This is what happens when we tend to see boxers break their base, as is maybe the case during rhythm steps, triangle steps, and L steps. There are occasions when breaking your base is actually advantageous, so the issue isn't so much boxers breaking their base, it's whether this movement is done consciously. If it isn't a conscious action, and you cannot punch, defend, or disengage with your selected movement pattern, then we have a problem. In order to prevent boxers from putting themselves in compromised positions whilst fighting, we need to apply the principle of progressive overload to our boxing, the same way that it would be applied in strength and conditioning. Progressive overload simply means that over time we increase the difficulty of the training we are doing. If we take this approach into our boxing training, it might mean one of 2 things. Firstly, increasing the volume, such as increasing the number of rounds performed, although you could increase the duration of a round as an alternative, and increasing the intensity, and intensity relates to maximal output. However, it's not clever to try and do both of these at once. Remember, if we take a randomized approach, we'll get randomized results. So
No, God! No, God, please, no!
The same can be said for a fighter's preparation inside the boxing gym. Rather than randomized workouts, each session should have a specific theme or adaptations which the coach is seeking to achieve with the exercise prescriptions they have set. Now let's talk about individualization in mixed ability group sessions. Group sessions, boxing coaching often being a second job, and the need to entertain paying members make it tricky for boxing coaches to pre-plan what their session will look like. Here's what I would suggest. If we're talking about footwork or conditioning the foot and ankle, then footwork rounds can be periodized. This means they're pre-planned to get progressively harder over a number of weeks. Power exercises that involve the foot and ankle, for example, jumps, or even if we're talking about the upper body, medicine ball throws and slams can be tacked onto the end of a warm-up. We can use competition to drive intent, so for example, sprints outside of the gym, space permitting, or simply using a tape measure for standing long jumps and medicine ball throw for distances. Another one that I quite like from my old amateur boxing days was seeing who could clear the distance between two ends of the boxing gym with the least amount of jumps. You just need to be sure that these things can be easily measured and repeated without bottlenecking members of the gym into one small section of it. Capacity exercises can also be snuck into an optional post-session robustness circuit with as few sets as possible approach to effortlessly individualize the sets and reps for each boxer. So for an as few reps as possible set, you would prescribe a total number of reps, for example 20 calf raises, and each boxer would break them down into as few sets as they can while striving for perfect technique.
So again,
Boxers with lower calf
raising
capacity
on two
might
legs,
treat
take one leg
20
away,
reps as
slowly down.
10 sets of 2 reps, whilst those with better capacity might treat it as 2 sets of 10 reps. You could easily start week 1 with a total number of reps at 20, and you could add 10 reps per week until you get to 50 reps in week 4. You could then slide this total number of reps down to back to 20 and repeat the process on a single leg. Programming in this way is a win-win for all those involved in the amateur boxing setup. Boxing coaches now have 8 planned weeks of capacity training simply by adopting a sensible and flexible approach to improving muscular capacity of their members. Seasoned boxers, i.e. those with an experience of strength and conditioning, will auto-regulate to make their sets harder, whilst members who want to join in can make their number of reps per set less to make it easier. Since footwork conditioning is disguised into gamified warm-ups, and we could potentially use conditioned footwork sparring here as well, members who aren't serious can still enjoy their session and can leave once the optional capacity circuits start. Those who are serious can show their commitment to their coach and their physical performance by joining in. Now, strength for the foot and ankle is an oddity, because strength is the ability to produce force against resistance, but it's difficult to do a 1RM test of the foot and ankle. Strength, or in the case of foot and ankle strength, can be general. So, for example, leg strength built through squat or hip hinge patterns, or it can be specific, such as producing force against the resistance provided by our own body weight and the canvas to propel ourselves in and out of range, such as during a 2-phase attack. Just as with capacity exercises, general strength exercises allow for greater overload, which makes it easier for us to develop strength. Although foot and ankle exercises like leg press calf raises or bent leg calf raises might not look like the sport of boxing, in absolute terms, they overload the foot and ankle to a greater degree than boxing drills do. Think of the boxer's feet as a Formula One driver's tyres. We need to make sure the tyres are fully inflated. We need to ensure the tyres are robust enough to mitigate them wearing thin when we put the miles in, and we want them to help us brake, re-accelerate, and change direction. Developing strength helps inflate the tyres. Developing ankle stiffness, this is the ability to reduce deformation upon landing or impact, helps us momentarily brake without dissipating too much energy, and developing the stretch shortening cycle, which we'll talk about shortly, allows you greater physical potential to change direction. Even with all these physical qualities, foot and ankle capacity, foot and ankle strength, foot and ankle stiffness, foot and ankle power, you still need a skilled driver to make the best out of them. It's no good having a boxer who has all these physical qualities but lacks the technical qualities to put them to good use. For more on the nuances or the ways in which strength is specific, you can check out my video review of Chris Beardsley's book on the topic in the top left or top right hand corner. Now let's talk about rate of force absorption or deceleration. As I've mentioned, strength of the feet is difficult to assess because we can't perform a 1 repetition max with the feet. That said, we can look at film study of when boxers are unintentionally flat-footed during their shadow boxing, or how easily their foot or their heels touch down onto the ground during vertical landing and rebounding tasks, because this is also an indicator of the strength of the foot and ankle that a boxer possesses. Boxers can develop deceleration strength of the foot and ankle by using what I call credit card landings. By keeping eccentric strength, this is the strength to brake or decelerate, one step ahead of accelerative strength, i.e. the ability to produce force, we are allowing our boxers the ability to progress in a phased manner. For more on what this looks like, have a look at phase 1 and the progression to 2 and 3 in my video, Everything You Need to Know About Strength and Conditioning for Boxing. Now let's talk about the stretch shortening cycle. This is what allows boxers to jump higher, punch harder, and spring out of distance from their opponents. Exercises that are preceded by a rapid stretch reflex or a preloading phase are more powerful than those that occur from a static position. The stretch shortening cycle is the storing and recoiling of elastic energy and is best developed through the combination of 3 methods. Method number 1, we need to increase the amount of elastic energy that can be stored during the downward phase of a movement. We can use heavy strength training for this, and movements such as remaining deadlifts, heavy squats, and stiffness landings, ideally which increase in height over time, are all great ways of increasing this storage of elastic energy. The second method we need to adopt are ones that increase the speed at which a boxer can go from storing energy to rebounding with this energy. For example, medicine ball throws from a catch position, low-level hurdle hops, pogo-style skipping. The focus with all of these exercises is on minimizing the time it takes to rebound. This means we're minimizing the time spent on the floor or the time in contact with a medicine ball prior to releasing it if we're talking about plyometric training for the upper body. The third and final method is to increase the amount of force output. Now, in boxers with no prior experience of weight training, we can use squat and hip hinge patterns, and once we've learned how to perform the movements correctly, we can load them heavy to take care of this. Boxers who can already deadlift twice their body weight might require more advanced methods, such as trap bar jumps with 30% of their 1 rep max. Now we've spoken about deceleration training, we're going to move on to acceleration training, or rate of force development. As I've explained previously in other Patreon exclusive content, power is the last step that we focus on prior to a peaking phase. This is because power that is built on top of improper positioning or on top of poorly coordinated patterning is like a house built on a bag of sand.
It feels like a bag of sand.
Rate of force development is another way of describing acceleration, or rather, how quickly you can produce a given amount of force. If a boxer produces force quickly, but doesn't produce that much of it, they might cruise to a decision, but not be able to keep their opponent off of them. If a boxer produces a lot of force, but doesn't do it very quickly, they might knock their opponent out with a thudding blow, or equally, their opponent might see their punch coming 3 weeks before this boxer threw it. Boxers can develop their rate of force development through sprinting, jumping, and throwing medicine balls. For boxers to balance their explosive qualities with their stretch shortening cycle capabilities, they should include exercises that are plyometric in nature, so ones that involve an element of elastic recoil, such as repeated jumps, medicine ball throws that are preceded with a catch phase, and they should include exercises that are more ballistic, so for example jumps or throws that take place from a relatively static position or have a minimal or non-existent bounce phase beforehand, such as trap bar jumps, horizontal hops and jumps, and traditional med ball slams and throws. The standing long jump and single leg hop and hold are excellent ways of concurrently measuring this force production with the rebound phase eliminated, whilst the triple single leg hop and the triple standing long jump provide excellent means of assessing the effectiveness of a boxer's stretch shortening cycle. Boxers who cannot perform a standing triple long jump in excess of 3 times their standing long jump would be best served by incorporating more plyometric exercises into their training programs. So in conclusion, capacity relates to how long, whereas power relates to how much. Capacity and power are inversely related, since the higher power output a boxer has, the less they will be able to sustain this. Mobility, which we've covered in previous articles, can be thought of as whether a boxer can get into a position, while stability can be thought of a boxer's consistency in remaining in that position. Where fatigue within specific muscle groups limits a boxer's ability to remain in that position, this can be thought of as a lack of capacity, whilst coordination can be thought of as an ability to move between positions. Boxers must be put through an assessment process of their mobility, stability, capacity, strength, and power, and it is this assessment process which should determine a subsequent training program. In boxers who are inexperienced from a structured strength and conditioning program perspective, here's what an integrated approach to optimizing the boxer's foot and ankle will look like. In phase 1, tolerance and capacity are built on top of mobility and stability. Ankle mobility and stability exercises can be snuck into warm-ups, gamified, or they can be made competitive in the form of sprints, landings, and jumps. In this phase, our boxing work might mirror this high-volume, low-intensity approach, with certain boxing sessions having a sport-specific muscular endurance focus via getting footwork rounds in the bank. In phase 2, we can add strength to these foot and ankle exercises by adding load to exercises like calf raises and tib raises. We can also add load to our jumps by increasing the height that a boxer falls from, the height or distance the boxer can jump to, or by trying advanced methods like trap bar jumps. In phase 2, we can increase the distance of our sprints and start to use these less as a method of developing explosiveness and more as a means of conditioning a fighter to prolong the duration of their explosive efforts. In phase 3, we should have effectively transitioned from using methods outside of the ring to condition the fighter, such as sprint interval training, landings, or strengthening exercises of the foot and ankle, to now using the sport itself to allow the fighter to sharpen their tools. At this point, the boxer's strength and conditioning should simply act to keep the fight in one piece, so using robustness circuits that we've already mentioned, or simply allow the boxer to express qualities that their boxing training does not allow them to do. For example, low volume strength and power work. In future content, I'll be breaking down hand speed, reaction speed, and repeated speed, and explaining how to develop these qualities in sync with the position, pattern, power, and peaking pyramid I've presented in the last few articles. Congratulations on making it through the championship rounds to hear the final bell of this video, and I'll catch you again soon.